Hi everyone, it's Kasia. In this video, let's talk Chiron. Some of you know that I'm really passionate about this subject. There was actually a VR going not so long ago about Chiron, started by First Light Mystics, Cassandra and Maha from Maha Treasure Box. I will link those two videos below so you can go and check them out as well. I was on holidays while the girls were making the videos, so I couldn't respond then, but you know, it was on my list to do, and I wanted to speak about Chiron from my perspective. And I have been working with Chiron for quite a long time. My Chiron's position in my astrology chart is quite prevalent. It's conjoining my MC, my vocational point. So I have experienced Chironic wounding and integrating of that wounding, you know, throughout my life. So that integration and healing, Chironic healing, empowered me to actually work with Chiron and share my passion for that energetic kind of point in our charts. In this video, I would like to, I have done a lot of different research, plus I have done a lot of charts for people and experienced the Chiron limitation and Chiron empowerment, so both ends of the coin, on myself and also on many clients. I have done hundreds of readings for people where I paid a lot of attention to Chiron, and that actually happened when I went to my first astrology reading in 2004. I bought myself an astrology reading for my birthday in Australia, and I went to an astrologer and was like gobsmacked, and I started studying astrology straight after that reading. And what this lady did at the end of the session, after we discussed like my personal chart, she said like, I'm doing some research on Chiron, and I would like you to ask if you'd like to participate. So she actually was doing experiential astrology. She put me onto my chart. She gave me Chiron symbol into my hand. She asked me to close my eyes, and she did a short visualization with me based on the positioning of my Chiron. And it was such an amazing experience to see that limitation which Chiron gave me at that moment. Obviously, I didn't kind of break through of that limitation then and there. It took another probably 10 years of processing and dealing with it. But finally, I can say, looking you straight into the eyes, that I did integrate my Chironic wound. With wounding, how they come to life, they come in cycles and in circles. And you know that saying about psychological evolution, that we peel layers of onion. So obviously there is still my Chiron return coming up. There's various transits that activate Chiron in our charts, and then that wounding, that old wounding can still open up and let you know that maybe there is still something else to explore. Maybe there is still some little shadow that kind of went into the avoidance mode for you. So I find it fascinating, and it goes on. And even though I can say honestly that I've integrated my Chiron, I still leave room for the next level of integration. So in this video, I would like to say, first of all, what Chiron is, because most of you might know what Chiron is, but maybe lots of you who are new to astrology are not familiar with that archetype. So Chiron is a centaur, and this card comes from the Mythic Tarot, the first edition. So it's a half horse and half human. And I found a few in the Mythic Tarot book. They actually give a different myth to how Chiron was born, but I actually in the most of the sources I found that different myth, so I'm going to use this one. So let's start with Chiron myth, just very briefly, so you have a sense of where this archetype comes from. So Chiron was born to Saturn and to the sea nymph Philyra, or Philyra, and because she actually didn't want to make love to Saturn, it seems like Saturn just raped her. And what came out of this union was Chiron, which was half human and half horse. And that might have been the reason, because when she was trying to escape Saturn, she actually changed and shapeshifted in different animals, one being the horse itself. So when Saturn actually mounted her, that might have been a reason why Chiron looked like it looked. So just the birth itself, it's already put Saturn into a very strange position when he's different, when he's strange, and when he feels like, you know, kind of separated from the rest of the humans or gods. And the nymph, the mother, when she saw him, she got scared and she abandoned him, as well as Saturn, who went back to his wife Rhea. So there is this theme of abandonment and feeling not loved, feeling different, and feeling unloved, and feeling wounded, and separated from the very early on. So he is not the little hero who just gives up. What he did, he started to take the weak position which he kind of came to the world with, and making his strength out of it. So this is also the part of the Chironic wound, which is the mastery, self-mastery and healing of what we kind of come to this world wounded at. And Chiron over the years becomes the first astrologer, the great doctor and healer. He becomes a teacher to many amazing gods and goddesses, and fosters a lot of children and teaches them. So he's a great teacher. Here in this tarot deck, he is the Hierophant. So we know that Hierophant often is seen as a teacher, and he's in his cave, which is not man-made. He is in the cave, and he is naturally equipped also, as each of us is, to deal with suffering and transmute it, and through mastery transform it into a form of evolutionary kind of gift and skill. And we talk about Chironic healing journey and healing process, because I always compare Chiron to the fairy tale about the princess and a little green pea. Doesn't matter how many comfortable mattresses you put on, that little green pea, it's itchy, and it's kind of forcing you to really look at your suffering, look at your vulnerability, look at that wounding, because this is where the gift and gold is hidden. When you become, through your suffering and through facing it, when you grow and you expand and you become the person that can in turn, through experiencing that suffering and understanding by compassion other people's suffering, give them also help them, heal them, in a way heal them, like make them aware of where they need to heal themselves, because obviously we always just heal ourselves, but we can have helpers, and Chiron was one of those archetypes. So he is an archetype of a wounded healer, but also there is this two parts to the archetype, wounded and healer, and he became courageous enough to face his wounding, and despite his disadvantages at the birth, he became and mastered his position, and became like really, really famous in mythological world. So Chiron spent his life teaching, and he's elevated at the end to the heavens, and it's placed in the constellation Centaurus. So it's interesting looking at Chiron and what it is. It was discovered 1977, so not very long time ago, and we're not even sure to the end what it is. So right now I think the science is kind of agreeing mostly that it might be a comet. It's a very bright comet with ecliptic orbit. For a very long time it was thought of asteroid or maybe minor asteroid, but I think now the science kind of thinks it's a comet, and the ecliptic goes between Saturn and Uranus. So this is also quite interesting, even looking at this picture, that he goes between the known world, which is Saturn, and the unknown world, which is Uranus, between the physical and between the spiritual. And often Chiron, Barbara Hand-Clough, she wrote a great book on Chiron. She spoke about Chiron as a rainbow bridge between these two worlds. And practically in our charts, so why would you get, for example, a Chiron reading, or why would you search, what Chiron is for you? Because most important thing about Chiron for us is that it kind of transfers for us and symbolizes for us the themes of where we feel imperfect, where we feel wounded, where we feel unwhole, when we feel unloved, when we feel vulnerable, and when we feel like we're not good enough. And at the same time, while facing this, going into that cave, going through the process of acceptance and learning about our wounding, first of all, we become masters of that wounding, and we integrate that and heal it. And through this process, we really becoming masters of ourselves and our own greatest teachers. Through doing that, we can really help other people going through similar experiences. So when it comes to Chiron healing, there is this keywords like imperfection, wounded, broken, handicapped, different. You feel burdened by a flaw. So you feel like, there is this niggling feeling that something is wrong with you in this particular thing. And usually when we look at Chiron, like we can look at my Chiron, let's say, on here on the MC. So when Chiron is close to an angle, I have Chiron in opposition to my moon also, and Venus and Uranus. So there's a lot of, for some people, there's Chiron plays a big role, and this is where the wounding gets kind of complex, and that's why I feel like it's sometimes peeling the onion, because you deal with one area and then the other comes up, a deeper one or a different angle one, and in a way it's a fascinating and amazing journey. So I would highly encourage you not to be afraid of it. It's something which you can really embrace, and we all have that gift of healing the Chiron and the empowerment that comes with it. And so the placement of Chiron is where we strive for perfection also, and feel driven to learn and understand what the heck is going on with us, because this is often when we feel something is wrong, like that little green pea, like what's going on. And there's also where we feel unloved. Often there can be cellular memories, even coming from past lives, depending on your aspects to Chiron. And there's also wherever the wound is found in the chart. So you'll find a triple kind of face of that wound: the healer, the wounded one, and also the one who wounds. Because when we're not aware of our wounding, we often project our wounding onto other people, or we meet other people who press that wound, and every time we kind of go, why am I always drawing the same boyfriends, or why am I don't know, getting the same shitty jobs, why am I never assertive enough, or whatever the Chiron story is for you. This is a repetitive pattern that it's in your face. You have to face it and you have to heal it. So when we unconsciously use Chiron, that's where our wounding tends to be limiting for us, when it's suffering, when it's unconscious, when there's niggling fears, where there is anxiety around it, where we're not sure exactly what we should do. And you don't have to be an astrologer, and I didn't know what my Chiron was for most of my life, and only finding that out was really an amazing, empowering kind of experience, but also didn't straight away help me to like deal with it, because it's a very subtle process, and you just have to be open and compassionate about it. Because also, you know, the more Chiron is involved in your chart, the probably deeper the wounding can go. So poke gently and give yourself, time to understand and empower yourself, and then heal that story. So personally, how does it affect your life? You would look for where your Chiron is in the chart. Also, you would look at what it aspects in your chart and where is it placed, because each one of those houses, so areas of life, would probably be an area where your chironic wound will mostly manifest or show itself. So I have, let's say, wounding around vocational point, and maybe being in the public eye. And some people can have wounding in relationship house, some others around the self-identity, others around, friends and group mentality, spirituality, and so on. So depending where in the chart your Chiron is, that would change, and also what planets are aspected by Chiron. So when I do, for example, Chiron readings, I will look at that Chiron positioning and Chiron aspects, and in general on like a kind of general life lesson from the chart. But then also you would look at all the transiting planets that come from aspecting maybe that Chiron. And Chiron itself moving and aspecting various planets, and it really works wonders. I had recently very big breakthrough at one of the NVC courses which I was going to, and I checked my ephemeris later, and obviously I had Chiron transiting Chiron conjoining my moon on that very day. So it was very, I'm like, astrology is real, like astrology works. And for whatever reason, having that confirmation from astrology really helps me and puts me at this level of peace. It's not like astrology does something for me. It's not like planets do something for me. I have to do it all. But having that kind of sense of mirroring and synchronicity, and seeing when those patterns start and when they end, and I'm knowing my own cycles, this is what I mostly value about astrology. This chironic healing also comes from looking at the positioning and sign of your Chiron and living there more consciously, bringing more light, more awareness into that particular area. And most of the time when I speak to clients, they know straight away when I start talking about Chiron. For me, this is really one of the most fascinating points in the chart right now, when it's very enlightening for people and very helpful when we discuss Chironic wound, when they can relate to it, when they go, oh my God, I'm not crazy, and when they actually find empowerment through just a realization of that simple truth. So while you realize what it is, bringing that awareness is so much easier. Sometimes it might, you might go into therapy, sometimes you might do a lot of internal healing and internal exploration. Sometimes you might go into some art therapy and really explore that subject. But when you allow this wounding to be exposed and you allow your vulnerability about it, you allow yourself to see it, to embrace it, to kind of go, okay, here is this thing, and that's me, it's part of me, it's the wounded part of me. What would you do to a wounded part of somebody? You tend to, soothe the wound, heal the wound. And this, that's what we start doing while we bring awareness to our Chiron. And then Chiron starts to become our ally, our close friend, our empowerment, our empowered teacher. And transits to Chiron, our Chiron return at the age of 50, which to me it's like initiation into cronehood, into wise woman or wise man, into the elder stage, when you really in more kind of embodied sense are there to share your wisdom and to share your experiences with others. And also the transits to Chiron, they bring opportunities for that healing and integrating that wounding and becoming that inner teacher and empowering agent of change for other people via inspiration, via talking to them, via just being yourself and allowing yourself to experience that suffering at some point, so that you have compassion for those who do suffer now. And so when we learn that Chiron story, and when we shift that story, when we transcend that story, we really become also masters of our suffering. And that gives strength, that gives power, that gives you that sense of, I dealt with it, I could do it, and I survived, you know. So there is this survival thing. Yeah, if Chiron energy, on the other hand, is denied, when we kind of avoid it, there's a lot of avoidance techniques. Even spirituality can be an avoidance technique. We can become that wounded one, you know. We attract people who wound us on that sore spot. They really like poke the wound or put salt onto the wound. We may end up in abusive relationships, we might end up in abusive jobs, we might end up in abusive family, create abusive families ourselves. So when we think of Chiron as this bridging, rainbow bridge between those two worlds, like the Saturnian world of responsibility and foundation and stability, and Uranian world of expansion, creativity and liberation, Chiron connects these two. So you don't just heal the wound and get rid of it. You kind of live with this chironic wound, but it's not triggering you for this reaction. I found this fascinating lecture at some point, that it's very connected to trauma. Like, you know, you have that wound, and around it you have this traumatic experience, and then you have another level when there is an or like a hint, or somebody says something, or somebody does something, and then from that wounding you react straight away. You project, or you attack, or you deny. And then when you go into the healing of that wound, then you have expansion and empowerment, because you don't go from this reactive position. So it's very psychological in this sense, but also I love this from, I think it was from Kim Rogers Gallagher. So as a bridge between Saturn and Uranus, this is like freedom from barriers. That's what Chiron is giving us. It's giving us independence despite physical limitations. It's giving us integrating unique individuals into the mainstream, because, you know, Uranus and Saturn, we can say Uranus is the uniqueness and Saturn is the mainstream. So where Chiron is in your personal chart, we can also say that necessity is the mother of invention, because this is where you exactly in that point, in that area of life, and how it will be, how the sign is, so what energy the sign your Chiron is in, where you need to be ingenious to find a way around your limitations. So you will be smart about it, you will be creative about it, you will be trying, because that green pea will be annoying you all your life. So most of the time when I speak to older clients, they know exactly what I'm talking to you and most of the time they have dealt with a lot of this Chironic story. But as I said, it comes in layers, it comes in as an onion, and younger people sometimes are very surprised, sometimes are very moved, but also recognize that wounding. So most of us recognize where Chiron sits. And Chiron position at the moment, so when the transiting Chiron is, shows the current healing rage. So, you know, this is the piece of humanity's collective psyche. And as a humanity, as a collective, we interested in opening it up and fixing it. So now Chiron is in Aries. It moved into Aries from Pisces. And what's interesting about Chiron, it spends most of its time in Aries and Pisces. But this is the first time it returned to its original position. So it was invented 1970, or found out in 1977, and now we're having collective Chiron return, and Chiron goes into Aries, so we deal with this individuation and really knowing who we are, know thyself, and we know how ego can be very empowering and how it can be very disempowering. When can it be like, yeah, I know the best and you're all wrong and there's only one truth and one truth only, and this is my truth and you guys follow it. So we will be seeing a lot of shifts like that, you know, when people will be trying to really resonate with their individual truth. They will ruffle a lot of feathers, and I think the point with Chiron always, and as with every planet and your astrology, is to go back to you. What do you think? Why is it triggering you? What triggers you? And search there. Don't point fingers, search within yourself, because that's where the true answer is for you. And not finding that and externalizing it won't really do you any good. So we will heal a lot of collective ego when Chiron starts moving through Aries. We probably will deal with a lot of idiotic behavior too, because that's, you know, to empower yourself and be truly assertive, you come from softness, and Aries is ruled by Mars, god of war, and I think there will be a lot of, you know, extreme spectrums of both. So let's see how it goes. But yeah, area in which suffering it's happening, so that area of life where Chiron sits awakens also the depths of compassion, and we are more compassionate. Suffering breaks us, but often that means it breaks our ego, it breaks our limitations, it breaks our hard shell, it lets that cracks let light in, and we become more expanded, more understanding, more whole as humans going through this. And Chiron is a big part of that healing the suffering ego and healing the suffering self. And I think, yeah, the mastery, and there's a big potential of mastery with Chiron. So I think in this way, Chiron is one of those points in our charts, and the whole Chiron story and how it weaves between different planets in our charts. It's very important. Chiron often can be involved, especially in contact with moon, with infertility, with lack of being wounded around motherhood. For me, it was the case when I couldn't give birth to children, and I have Chiron opposition moon. That was very interesting for me to see lots of clients who have Chiron moon aspects, because I was quite personally, you know, aware of it. I was asking people, not everybody has it, so bear it in mind that it's not always the case. Might depend on other aspects as well, but it's quite fascinating to see how we repeat those things. And I think collectively now this Chironic story is going to be an important one for us. So if you would like to get a Chiron reading from me, just bear in mind that I will need exact as possible time of birth. I had a client asking if I can do it without time of birth. It will be very difficult for me, because without time of birth I'm unable to see what area of life that Chiron would sit, and so the answer is no, I won't be able to do it without the time of birth. The more exact the time of birth, the more exact obviously the astrological chart, and the more point on my interpretation of it will be. While this Chiron reading is quite beautiful, the way I do it, I do astrological analysis first, and then I do also a tarot reading, which shows where you're at right now, and always tarot gives like another layer to astrology. So I really think this reading is very in-depth and very all-encompassing, and I'm trying to deliver it as gently and with sense of humor, and, you know, warm embrace as possible, but also it's a very honest reading, so I'm not beating about the bush. Chiron is not about this, and I think you get the reading when you're ready to hear the truth. You're not getting the reading to just hear nice things about it. But I find it also very empowering, because that's Chiron. Chiron empowers through transcending the suffering and the soft spots. So I'm hoping this was inspiring. I encourage you all to explore your Chirons. If you need help, get a reading with me. If you want to do it yourself, there's lots of info. This book, Astrology for the Bright Side, it's very cool. It's in general a cool book on astrology for beginners. There's also a Chiron and the Healing Journey by Melanie Reinhardt. And there is also the Barbara Hand-Claw book, Chiron as Rainbow Bridge. Can't remember the exact title, but I will write the names of these 3 books down there. I hope it was inspiring. I love talking astrology. If you have any questions, just shoot in comments or write me a message. And thanks for watching, and speak to you soon. Bye.